This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to Postcards from the Edge. I am your host, Amy Nelson, and with me this week is Laz Marquez. Laz, thank you for coming on Postcards.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to talk about this episode.
Yeah. Now, you previously have been on the Edge main show, and you were discussing your Star Trek Discovery artwork that you create. And listeners, if you missed that one, please go check it out. It's the Edge 53. But this is the first time you've been on Postcards. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your Trek story? And inquiring minds want to know, are you creating artwork for season 2?
Of course. So my name, as Amy mentioned, I am Laz Marquez, and I'm an artist and illustrator within the entertainment industry. So what does that mean? I create artwork, whether it be illustrative or otherwise, for the entertainment industry. So that could be posters, it could be artwork for galleries, it could be DVD covers, et cetera, et cetera. Specifically, I focus on science fiction and horror. So that's kind of the encapsulation of what I do. And how did I get into Trek? It's been ingrained in my blood since I was really young. I got into Trek when I was about 5 years old, starting specifically with Star Trek: The Next Generation, which I'm also wearing a hoodie for this specific. I'm raising myself
nice.
So Amy could see for this episode, and I fell in love with the show. I was incredibly geeky growing up. And grew up in a single parent household, so a lot of my upbringing was really inspired and influenced by television and film. So when I saw Star Trek: The Next Generation for the first time, it was really my formative years and really inspired me in so many ways. I fell in love with those characters, those storylines, what they were dealing with, and overall the aspiration of a better future. And it's stuck with me ever since.
Yeah. And your artwork you're doing for season 2?
I am continuing my episode poster series for season 2. The most recent one you can find on Twitter. And I will say Star Trek Discovery thus far this season has been giving me the best anxiety in the world because the storylines are so nuanced and so great that to produce something that I think is worthy for the fans and worthy for the show is really daunting.
Yeah, so I cannot wait to see what you have for this one because I think there are so many amazing themes and we get such character development. Like, do you try and just pick a character or do you choose a theme or does it depend on what you're feeling?
I try specifically to go by the themes that are presented by the writers and by the visionaries of the show. Versus characters, I think there are times when I feel inclined to include everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when, the good thing about doing episode posters is that I can focus in on certain pieces, which is why, again, I think this season has been a little more difficult because everybody has such a rich story so far.
Mm-hmm.
So it's becoming a little challenging to kind of figure out what do I focus in on, and who do I feature. So yeah, I did also this morning start the episode poster for New Eden.
Yay!
And I'm excited for the concept. I just hope I can do it within a week's time.
Yeah. So listeners, he does this work within a week. Like that's your goal, is to get it finished so that you can focus on the next week's episode.
Yep. It's weekly and it's very ambitious in between other projects and other work. So
this is just for you having fun. You still have your jobs and other commitments, right?
Yeah, this is really me giving back to the community in a way that Star Trek gave back to me.
Right.
So every week I want to show my love for all of the people that actually, are on the ground creating this show, for all the people watching it, and again, giving back and hopefully giving some joy to those that see it and hopefully enjoy it.
Well, it does give joy. I love looking at your posters. So,
Thank you.
All right. Well, today we are going to discuss the fan response to season 2, episode 2, entitled New Eden. So as of this recording, we had 257 comments on the Babel conference. My goodness, that was a lot to go through. Now, if you would like to participate and share your response, please post your comments on the Babel conference. That is our listeners group on Facebook. Type Babel, Babel, into the search field and it will come right up. So, Laz, after watching, what was your initial response to this episode?
So my initial response was that this was probably the best episode of Star Trek Discovery yet. I know hearing your podcasts and those that you've been attributed to often, that you're a big TNG fan. And this felt very TNG to me. It felt very much like it was going back to the roots of what Star Trek meant, but also allowing for different storylines to be happening at the same time that fed into something that was overarching versus something singular. So it all felt like it was coming together in such a beautiful way. And I think some of the details were familiar, but also new in a lot of ways in how they touched upon Terrelysium and the combinations of religion. And there were just a lot of rich aspects to this episode that I thought was wonderful. How about you?
Yeah, the themes on this was just so powerful. Like you touched on religion and science. And when Burnham says, well, science is my religion, and have you considered this? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's just perfect. And then to have it end up with Pike, sort of saying, well, because Burnham was questioning, do you have faith? And he's like, I have faith in ourselves and faith in what we can do. And I was like, oh, that is just so perfect. I loved that part of it. I also felt that it was, just going back to what we're used to with 90s Trek. And I don't know if that's a good thing, because I did like season 1, and I like that they're pushing the envelope of what is quote unquote Trek. So I don't know. I'm just very interested to see where it's going and what they're going to do and how much are they going to try and do this episodic versus the overall arc. But I think they've got a really nice balance with what they're doing with it this season. So
I think what was interesting, to touch upon what you were saying, I loved Discovery season 1. Mm-hmm. I think I'm inclined naturally. I love, darker sci-fi and darker, horror aspects of things. And I felt like they really touched upon some of the themes that we're uncomfortable with as viewers. So for me, I was open to that and really felt like they did that really well. What I thought was fascinating about this, though, or even the first two episodes, is that they've been able to be a little tighter with the writing, with what we can expect for the future. Like, again, all of those story arcs seemed like they were really, truly coming together for something that we can expect in the next number of episodes. And I felt like, even though it was familiar, again, like it was very much like Who Watches the Watchers in many respects, but it pushed it in kind of a Star Trek Discovery kind of way, where it broke down some of our characters, it rose up some of our characters, very similar to, I think, the first season.
All right. Well, let's get to our listener response. So, Laz, why don't you start us off?
Sure thing. So Chris Chaplin, matching with Trek's legacy of thoughtful, meaty stories about ideas related to the human condition, New Eden gave us so much to chew on, from Pike's backstory, an obvious wrestling with faith and science, a false dichotomy, in my opinion, to Trek's updated Arthur C. Clarke quotation about alien intelligence and God. We have something to discuss and question and think about for our lifetimes now. Many of Trek's best thought-provoking episodes are still in conversation today, such as TNG's Half a Life and the Death with Dignity movement, to name one of Voyager's lineage and the ethics of designer babies. I could praise the episode's direction, the well-written, clear technobabble, and Saru's soaring leadership skills. But I'll just say this. The crew rallies to figure out what is ethical and carries that action out as a family. Who could want more from Star Trek?
Yes, Chris, definitely some meaty stories to chew on. And I loved, as you said, the Arthur C. Clarke quotation and then talking about that intelligence and God. And if we don't understand it, then we attribute it to God. And I just thought that was so powerful.
I also think it's really interesting to see Pike. I'm a huge fan of The Cage. And I loved Pike when I first went into watching the original series. And I think it's really interesting to see his wrestling with faith and science and hearing about, his father being somebody who was also contradictory with that within his household. It was really cool to see almost echoes of what we might see in The Cage, of why he's so broken down in a lot of ways, and how maybe this season might get there.
Todd Odo says, I find it interesting that if Discovery hadn't been brought to the asteroid in Brother, they never would have had that chunk of rock to save New Eden this week. Discovery is being manipulated for some reason by these angels. I found that interesting. Todd, I completely agree. And I love that the Red Angel string is just being pulled on ever so lightly in every episode. I think that's so cool.
I would completely agree with Todd on this one. There's something really beautiful, I think, about seeing how these threads are being tied together, but also, for me, like a big question, which is this Red Angel nefarious or doing this for a better, bigger reason? So, yeah. Lila Phillips, really enjoying the season. Thought-provoking topics brought forth in a reflective way. Pike is rapidly becoming one of my favorites. Lila, I'm right there with you. I can't help but fall in love with Pike.
Oh, me too.
And not only because he's very handsome, but he's just very quickly becoming the captain that I would have hoped would be leading this crew. And you could see like the effects, I think. Amy, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. But like everybody's so much lighter and so much more eager to be proactive. Like it's so cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. And you see that, when they're coming up with ideas, like especially in this episode, like Tilly has an idea, Burnham runs with it. Well, we need to be closer. And then, Tilly has another idea and Stamets is like, yeah, I could do that. Let's go into the asteroid. And yeah, they're really working together. And again, this episode came through with a very thought-provoking topics and themes. So agree, Lila. Well done. Jason Chapman says, loved the New Eden episode. I never sat down to watch the episode. I stood the whole time glued to the TV. So much to say, but I will say this. More Joanne Awashikon, please. Yes, she was great.
She was amazing. I love that actress. I think it was beautiful to see not only more of her on this away mission, but also more of the bridge crew. I think a lot of fans asked for it from, the first season, and also seeing just more action on the bridge and seeing these folks and learning more about them in these tidbits with their away missions. It was great. Christopher D. Littlefield. This just isn't Star Trek. Kidding. Disco keeps on getting trekkier and trekkier. I was getting all the TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise feels. This episode really reminded me of TNG's Journey's End, and most especially Homeward. So happy to see more of the fab Awashikon, right? in action. What a badass. Detmer to Obs. The interplay between May and Tilly was so satisfying. Loved her. I'm suspecting some stray green spore action at work. I really loved the religious aspect of the inhabitants of New Eden. It really hit home with my own very conservative and religious upbringing. Seriously, though, how many times do we have to see Culber get his neck snapped? Good old-fashioned Trek with a disco twist. Chris, I completely agree with you on so many levels. There's a lot to bite into with your comment. Awashikon, by all means, more of her, please. I know we saw her in the Mirror Universe a little bit more, but let's get more of her. She is a badass. Detmer, I'm loving. I loved even her side comment on her getting her flight training at 12.
Yeah.
That was super rad. Like super, super cool. I love me, like I've mentioned before, I'm a big sci-fi horror fan. I loved seeing some of the Tilly moments and where that may lead, ghost or not. Touching upon the religious stuff. Yeah, like for completely. I think it was interesting again to just see the dichotomy between even the crew and how they deal with it. Like it was super, super beautifully done.
Yeah. Very good. Christopher Mock says, this was a nice follow-up to Brother, and it definitely feels like we are getting breadcrumbed with these red bursts. Each one has a task to complete and some sort of reward, Asteroid and Shadow Bay, which is vital to the next one, Rings of New Eden. My only nitpick was the door chime. Did Frakes forget which series he was, or was the Voyager doorbell intentional? Stamets could use a Ben Sisko talking to. His speech to Worf when he wanted to leave Starfleet after the Enterprise was destroyed in Way of the Warrior is a speech Stamets needs now to hear. He's convinced he can run all the way to the Vulcan Science Academy to avoid dealing with the pain of losing Culber. He's eventually going to have to stand his ground and face that pain. Yeah, Christopher, I think we are seeing the ramifications of Culber's death on Stamets, and it's beautiful. I think it's very well played. We get and I think when anyone deals with loss, like you can get caught up in the moment of your work or, with your friends, and then something will happen and you just shut down. And we saw that in this episode. And I thought that was played very brilliantly and so thought out of like how someone deals with a tremendous loss like that.
I think, obviously, I mentioned this in my last podcast with you guys on the Edge, but being a gay man myself, there's something really beautiful about, again, not only having seen this relationship portrayed for the first time on screen, but also seeing what loss can do in the context of myself. I'm normally having to relate to different kinds of people or different kinds of relationships. So seeing that pain allowed me to understand pain that I've dealt with in the past with, certain breakups within, even my own community. Like there was something just so sad. And I cried multiple times in the first episode as well as this one, just seeing Anthony Rapp's beautiful performance and even, referencing Christopher D. Littlefield, we've seen a lot of that neck snapped. So it's like they're hitting home the impact of this, and it's hard. It's hard to watch. But Stamets, I agree. Like I think he'll get out of it. I hope he will. So Jason Sorensen, Gene has to be smiling. 54 years after NBC execs denied his first true vision of Trek with Captain Pike, we now have what I believe he wanted from this character and the beacon of humanity he could be while exploring in the stars. Faith, hope, science, family, kinship, exploration, mystery. This had all the cerebral elements that makes something true Trek. Well done, number one, Frakes.
Yes, Jonathan Frakes did direct this episode, and it just was so well done. And I love all those things you mentioned: faith, hope, science, family, exploration, mystery. Like it was a very, very good episode. And I believe Mr. Gene Roddenberry would be smiling.
I 100% agree with you, Amy and Jason. And I feel like Frakes is the gift that keeps on giving with Star Trek.
All right. Mark Rodriguez, as I lovingly call him, my negative Nelly. We're going to do a captain's log here because we're going to mark this date in history. He says, I've been really tough on Discovery, but I really enjoyed this episode. And in my opinion, it's the best one yet. Woohoo!
Woo!
I know it's not a popular opinion, but for me, Star Trek is finally back. Discovery has flirted with what I call Star Trek storytelling, but they jumped in all the way last night. I really hope this is just the beginning of more of this type of storytelling. The characters are gelling for me, but I do hope that Tilly won't be solving all of the problems. Keep on trekking, Discovery.
It's interesting, Mark, because I feel like I completely agree with you. I mentioned it at the top of this episode. I think this is one of the best yet. And I think part of it is that these writers and these actors and the characters just evolving through all of those conduits, they're getting more comfortable. I think if we think about any of the other Star Treks, the first season is always, the launching ground. They need to find that comfort zone. So, I agree. Like, this is true Star Trek storytelling, and the characters are gelling. But I do think with Tilly, she's not the only person solving the problems. I think luckily they're all working together. I think part of this episode that I saw as a cautionary tale for Tilly was that she went off on her own to solve a problem, and it bit her in the booty a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good point. Yeah.
Okay. So Tim Hands, that was more like it with New Eden. The first episode in Discovery to tell a very traditional Star Trek story. Everything about this episode hit all the right notes. It had a strong more philosophical story with an interesting mystery involved to unravel. The actors are now starting to feel more comfortable in their parts. Heck, even the ship's navigators and helmsmen got far more to do than just pilot the ship, all guided by yet another expertly directed episode by Jonathan Frakes. A top episode of this high quality only restores my own faith in Star Trek again. Very much hope that this is the start of what could be a memorable back to form season. Tim, completely agree. I think, again, I know Amy and I mentioned we loved Star Trek Discovery Season 1. I think what's great about seasons is that you're able to explore different ways to tell stories. And I think we saw that war story. Now we're seeing these characters, these storylines, the abilities to weave different things together. I'm not always necessarily, and this is only my opinion, in the camp of feeling like Discovery Season 1 wasn't Star Trek. Like, to me, it was. It was, and this coming from somebody who watched all the other series and loved them, I feel like that was a portion that we needed to see to get to where we're at now. I agree, Jonathan Frakes, again, gift that keeps on giving. And I thought it was really cool that you actually said that this episode restored your faith in Star Trek again, because this was a lot about faith versus science and how those come together.
Nice, Laz. Well, Tyler Orenchuk says, great classic Star Trek episode. My favorite parts. Number 1, Captain Pike sacrificing himself to protect the little kid. Number 2, Saru's reprimand pep talk to Tilly in sickbay. Number 3, Detmer pulling the donut maneuver. Can't wait for the next episode. Yes. Tyler, 3 excellent picks in this episode. When Captain Pike did not hesitate. He saw what was going to happen and just totally jumped. Like, oh my gosh, what a true captain. What a great trait he has.
Yep. Agree with Captain Pike. Again, I am kind of in love with him. I think he's such a fresh of breath air after the scariness that I personally experienced with Lorca, even when he was pretending to be good. So it's nice to see their extreme differences, and also the show's ability to reference that. So yeah, like it was just lovely. The Saru reprimand pep talk. I'm not going to lie, I saw this episode 3 or 4 times in preparation, not only for this podcast, but for my episode poster for it. And I cried like a baby every single time. Just seeing how Saru is like such captain material, and how he progresses that way, and how he understands the people he's working with and knows the right thing to tell them. And then, like donut maneuver with Detmer. Like, I'm not surprised she got her license at 12.
I've been flying since I was 12. Loved it.
Okay, so, and I hope I'm saying this right, but Cathal Fitzgerald, top class Trek, progressed season arc with an in-episode arc. Away mission, character development, looked great, fascinating themes. As an example, a composite religion, and Spock thinking he's going mad because his logical mind cannot reconcile the intervention of an angel. Well done to all involved. I'm curious to hear what you think about this one, Amy.
That was definitely one of the themes that I found quite fascinating. And I am not going to say more because I'm going to discuss this on the Edge main show. So listeners, please listen to that one, because I've been, just putting these thoughts together. And of course, reading through all of your thoughts is helping me to, formulate what my opinion is and how, spoiler, how amazing I think that this theme is and that I want to get into more. So,
well, Cathal or Cathal, I'm trying some different ones, just so I'm not getting the name wrong. But I will say, and I'm curious to see how the story evolves, but it would make sense for somebody like Spock, in my mind, in my opinion, to feel maddened by something that he's been taught his entire life would not be logical, but that keeps on revisiting him in the form of especially something like an angel. We could see, I think, threads of that with Burnham when she's speaking with Pike. And even though she's seen it, her natural inclination is to say, this is something that can be explained. And Spock has clearly been dealing with this for so long, since he was a kid. So if Burnham were in that situation, I think she might, hypothetically, depending on, whether her Vulcan side or her human side comes into play, probably fall into a same respect that Spock is, admitting himself to a psychiatric ward and thinking he's going crazy because it's not logical to see a red angel and something that's, from what we can see from the first episodes, guiding things that are bigger than themselves without explanation.
Claude Hogue says, overall, a good episode. I enjoyed it very much. I would agree that this is classic Trek with a good combination of action, drama, and comedy mixed in. A good mixture of some mysteries to keep us on the edge for upcoming episodes. Is Discovery mixing religion and science in this season? Well, Claude, thank you. Yes, they did tell us at the end of season 1 that season 2 would be looking more at religion and faith and just sort of those big ideas. So, and then of course you can't get away from science. So it is, and we were to expect a good mix of religion with the science.
Yep, completely agree. Sarah Gale Evans, 2 episodes in, and Pike already messed with General Order 1, the Prime Directive. He's a real captain now, but man, what a good episode. Pike is a great leader. Saru's connection with Tilly was unexpected but sweet, and just some great classic Trek.
Sarah, hello. I just had dinner with her last night. So, yeah, I think your point is so funny. He's a real captain now. Every captain has messed with the General Order 1 or Prime Directive. So I love your comment. Thank you. I think,
again, and it might be my TNG soul coming into play, but, I kept on thinking as it was happening, who watches the Watchers? And how dealing with that and growing with your crew through violating the Prime Directive or General Order 1 is almost like a rite of passage on how a captain can do it, but in a respectful way. And I think Pike did it just so beautifully, even though it wasn't in his gut to do it. And he really took into account Burnham and, his crew's point of view through her to do something that would be unconventional or uncomfortable for him. And he, fall in love with Pike.
Yeah. Chris Trebuzio, who we also had dinner with, we had a little Las Vegas group get together.
Beautiful.
He says, I will say this, 2 episodes into the new season, and season 1 felt like DS9 with its dark undertone. In 2 episodes of season 2, we're getting back to the Trek we all know, exploration of space, religion, and we are starting to see our beloved bridge crew no longer as extras, but with each having their part to play, more so with the dialogue between them. Yep, loved seeing the parts that they have control over and what they're doing and their being called on by name, which I think is so important because we get to hear them more, we get to see them more and their responsibilities on the ship.
Yep. 100%. Hakur G, another great episode. Just like last episode, it was a combination of so many things I love about Star Trek. The writers clearly know the characters much better by now, and you can feel that they have connected all on a personal level. Love seeing Detmer and Owo, as Tilly called her, getting bigger roles, and can't wait for Reese. Bryce and Ariam to get more to do as well. I felt that keeping these characters low profile the first season mirrored how TOS treated Chekhov's Sulu and sometimes Uhura. Dr. Pollard seems to be integrating into the show very well too. Both episode 1 and 2 felt much more episodic, even though they are connected. I have a feeling they are borrowing from how season 3 of Enterprise was done. So excited for this season. It just keeps getting better.
Hakur, I agree. And I think making that comparison to season 3 of Enterprise works more for me because a lot of people are saying, oh, it's so familiar to Deep Space Nine. But I like that. For me, it makes more sense that it's connected to season 3 of Enterprise, where it's still episodic, but these little pieces tie into the overall story. And I guess season 1, I would say, is more like Deep Space Nine. But this, I think, very clear connection to season 3 of Enterprise. Great point, Hakur.
I think it's interesting because we haven't, and this was like the big crux of Discovery season 1, is that we haven't necessarily had like a true episodic like Trek or like a through line within the entire arc. So like it's episode by episode, and you really have to pay attention to the details and the story arcs. So, previously we were getting kind of like story of the week, and that was beautiful. But now we're starting to see how DS9 could be, or that tone could be like a first season of something, or something like season 2 of Discovery could be more influenced by the hope of, other series and how that comes to life through a larger story arc.
All right. Drew Sersnick says, I really liked season 1, but I think I'm liking season 2 even more. This was really good episode, a good story that showcased most of the crew in some way and that contributed to the larger arc as well. I'm really liking Captain Pike. He's like the dude's rug. He ties the whole thing together. I love that, Drew. Thank you. I'm loving Captain Pike as well.
What's the dude's rug?
Well, I don't know, but I think when you tie it all together, I don't know.
I'm kind of like, I'm baffled by it. I thought it was something I like a reference I didn't understand.
I know. Well, and he has it capitalized. So I don't know.
I'd be curious to hear, Drew, what the dude's rug is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So David Powell, loved it. I thought it was very Trek. I was a bit nervous with the introduction of religion in Pike, but I took that later to be more knowledge garnered from his father, the religious studies scholar. But he did know liturgical responses, and also with you, in parentheses. His noting the expansion of Clark's third law was nifty. Also, I find the mysteries very intriguing. The Red Angels, of course, and Tilly's high school friend. I'm wondering if the latter has something to do with the mycelial network.
There's definitely something going on. And it's, again, all of these things are getting woven together to still go with the rug metaphor. Because, the Tilly's green spore landed on her shoulder, and now she's recognizing the asteroid and what it did to the spores. And now she's seeing, dead people. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very like The Sixth Sense.
Mhm.
And I loved that notion. I knew right away that there was something kind of off, probably by her friend's, portrayal. And
Mhm.
there was just something very, very strange about it. I'm just kind of curious because if I were to predict, I don't know if we're allowed to do that on this
Sure,
podcast,
go for it.
but like there seems to be something that would tie into, again, if she's seeing her dead childhood friend, and that person is guiding her through whether it be the mycelium network or the Red Angels influence. I would assume that might be why we see Hugh Culber in the future.
Wesley Marchena says, good episode. I like seeing Owo on the away team. The showrunner said the season would deal with the line between science and faith. So far, the Discovery has investigated 2 out of the 7 red lights. In both instances, the Discovery has saved people on the brink of destruction as a direct result of investigating the red lights. Coincidence? Happenstance? Divine intervention? I look forward to the rest of the season as they continue exploring this topic. Wesley, that is a great, great comment. And that has been in my mind. And yeah, it's like, okay, 2 out of the 7. Check. What's going to happen? I'm so excited.
Like the big thing for me, I think, and a lot of fans in the first season was that we weren't able to explore different places. We weren't able to explore different circumstances as much because it was really tied between, the Federation Klingon War and then subsequently the Mirror Universe and then back to the war. So now, like, it feels really organic to be able to go to these different locations, these different, issues that the whole crew has to really come together for. So it's kind of lovely that 2 out of the 7 has already given us like a freshness of different things that our crew has to come up against.
So there were some bits and pieces, is what I like to call this segment. And Justin Ozer says, interesting bit of trivia. One of the writers of the episode, Vaughn Wilmot, also played a Bajoran security officer in the TNG episode Descent. Well, Justin, my TNG Earl Grey co-host, thank you for finding that connection. I think that's a great bit of trivia.
That is amazing. And now I have to rewatch that a million times.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kay Frick says, I saw this comment on another group and thought Amy Nelson would enjoy it. Saru said New Eden was 51,500 light years away from their position. And Pike said, using warp drive, it would take 150 years to get there. 51,500 divided by 150 equals 343 times the speed of light, which on the old FTL speed scale is warp 7. So Discovery's maximum safe cruising speed or emergency speed is warp 7.
Okay, thank you for all of that math. It made my little heart happy. And that's great.
I'm awful at math, and that was really difficult to read. I know it's your thing, but woo, that was a mouthful.
Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you for that little bits and pieces. Laz, you're so funny. Well, here on Postcards, we don't always read just the positive. We do get to talk about questions and concerns that some of the listeners had to say. So Brandon A. Coles says, I liked it, but I'm still not in love with it. All right, Brandon. Hopefully you'll keep on watching and maybe find something that you will fall in love with.
I'll say there have been a lot of TV shows that even in the beginning of their second season, I wasn't in love with. I'm a huge fan of things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that show did not have a good first season, and it wasn't the great start, to a second season. But sometimes you fall in love with something after the fact when you're able to digest it. So stick with it. See what you think. Dan Leckie says, "This to me was the nail in the coffin. I've now resolved to watch no more of the failure that is Star Trek Discovery. Still eager to see the upcoming Picard series, though."
So, Dan, I thank you for sharing. And this is really, and I see all the comments, this is new. I haven't heard anyone say that they are not going to watch anymore. And Dan, I respect what you say. And if you don't like it, don't watch it. But I am happy that you're looking forward to the Picard series, because I'm looking forward to that as well.
Oh, ditto. And yeah, if it's not your thing, there clearly is more Trek to come.
Yes, lots of it from all the announcements. Janessa Chiharda says, "I really wanted to like this, and while I like the slick production values, a number of little things just didn't work for me. The descendants of the human survivors on the planet, I couldn't get over that after 200 years, they weren't so racially mixed to the point of ethnic ambiguity. Certainly, the young girl could qualify, but the adults, not so much. Also, Pike's choice to not offer Jacob a chance to leave feels jarring and out of place after we've learned of Saru's backstory and that he also came from a pre-warp civilization and an indigenous one at that. The line, 'My religion is science,' really left a bad taste in my mouth. It's something hardline theisists frequently accuse scientists and other rationalists of, that somehow empirical evidence seeking is equivalent to religious belief. Ugh. Science and theology are the total different things." The episode's saving grace was Tilly, as usual. I loved her saying to Detmer, "You get to do donuts in an asteroid field." And Detmer's corresponding line, "Executing donut maneuver," got a laugh out of me. I'm really curious to see where May's ghost will lead us. I wonder if her manifestation is a prelude to how Culber returns. More excited for next week and Tyler's return. And then Ria Papagiorgio says, "Janessa, agree with you on many of these points. The lack of ethnic mixing is a flaw I see through Star Trek. Don't get me started on the accents. Maybe the only thing I disagree with you about is I loved the line, 'Science is my religion.' I thought the episode took a very awkward approach to religion, but one thing that is fitting for the current times in which we live. Too much to get into here, but I appreciate that the line acknowledged the similarities between the faith that people put in science and the faith that people put in religion." Well, Janessa, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. A lot to really delve into. And I do agree with you on the point of leaving Jacob, because it seemed like he was asking to go back multiple times. He was asking Pike. He was asking the female leader. I'm sorry, I forget her name. Like, he wanted to know the truth and yet was denied, and then told the truth, but in a way that's going to make him sound crazy and loony to the rest of the inhabitants there. That was a little jarring to me.
I think to that point, Amy, it's funny because like I saw it as this isn't where we're going to get to with when certain captains may or may not violate the Prime Directive, in that Pike really didn't. He wasn't going to do this. It was a true compromise and something that he really wanted to stick to. So for me, although I agree, like there was a bit of awkwardness, it feels like they could have spent a little bit more time on the landing for it. I did feel like Jacob was given enough context to know like you not divulging too much is going to be more helpful, and we're giving you a nugget so that you can get there one day with that battery. You know what I mean? Like something that will allow him, because he seemed like the scientist, to really, have something to build that future for that colony without bringing them back to the ship. the religion versus science thing, Janessa, I hear you there. I think some, and I respect what you're saying here about it leaving, a bad taste in your mouth. I think for me, I saw it as an evolution of what the church was already doing, which was combining different viewpoints that may, in our current day and age, not necessarily come together yet, but we are in a different future within Star Trek Discovery's timeline, where science effectively for Burnham might be her religion. So I saw that more as a way for her to kind of dive her toes and say her piece to this new civilization that they haven't encountered yet, and see their reaction, and they seem to accept it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that if she's trying to blend in and speak a language that they are familiar with in terminology, instead of saying, well, no, this is, I'm all into science, like putting it in terms that they would understand. Well, religion is my science, maybe that's what she was doing there.
It was, again, it's a really difficult thing. And this is what I love about Star Trek, because I've been thinking about the themes and the tone of this episode, and some of those really, in some ways, depending on who you are, some controversial thoughts about what that means to, bring theology together as one core thing within, a church, and starting civilization that way, or what is, the difference between science and faith, which seems to have come up quite a lot with the questions thus far. So I understand why it might be challenging for some people to reconcile or put that together, but it's what I love about Star Trek. Jeremy Chang, the season mystery is growing. Is the template for the rest of the season going to be red signal leads us to save another group of people in under 4 hours with science, slowly uncovering the mystery of why the Red Angel and Tilly's imaginary friend is letting the Discovery be an angel to people?
Yeah, I think, Jeremy, your question brings up this good point of this Red Angel that we're sort of unraveling. Is it letting the Discovery be this angel to, civilizations and to the people? I think it's a great question that you ask. And it seems like, yes, I think we are getting the Discovery under the manipulation, guidance, direction under this Red Angel. Until we have other words, we're just going to have to take it on faith.
I see what you did there. That was good.
Andrea Boot says, this is a bit of a wild theory at the moment, but does anyone else think that Tilly being able to see dead people will be key to bringing back Culber?
I will say 100% yes. Like, I think they're setting us up. I initially thought Culber would be back much sooner. I thought he was going to appear in this episode. I think they're putting the pieces in place in like a really intriguing kind of way. And I think that it may be, and this is again hypothesis, but I think they're going to reunite a damaged Stamets and Tilly to lead to Culber coming back. If I could predict.
Yeah, there was a great discussion in the Babel Conference, listener. Andrea started this great thread going through that. And I don't know if she's key. I sort of think Stamets is the key, but I think she's going to be helpful to that.
Yeah, like a facilitator.
Yeah, because Stamets was the first one to see him. And so I think that's going to be the main one. But yeah, I think Tilly is going to be working with Stamets somehow to bring back Culber. I don't know.
We need them to get back together. I know
Yeah.
Stamets is all like, he's sad and
I
doesn't want to deal with anybody.
After he made that jump and he just, walked out of engineering, I just felt so bad. Oh, it was heartbreaking.
It truly was. I look forward to seeing how that evolves.
Well, Laz, let's get your final thoughts. How do you think that the fans responded to this week's episode?
Overall, I think it was largely positive. It seems like everybody really felt like this was getting back to the core of what Trek really is, and the storytelling and pushing boundaries. It seemed to me that most people really dug it. I think the contrary commentary makes perfect sense to me, and to me, I would say, like, if you want to stick with it, stick with it. I think there's some good stuff to come.
Yeah. It's interesting, just a couple of themes that I've noticed going through these two episodes and reading everyone's response. It's so funny because it was interesting because last week there were a couple of comments. It was like, Burnham has all the answers. Why is she da 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 da? And now this week we've got Tilly's got all the answers. Why did it? I'm like, but that's what makes it great is everyone's coming up with answers, and that we're getting, like I mentioned before, like, Tilly would have an answer. Yeah, she had an answer, and it was, improved on by Burnham and, executed by Stamets and Detmer. And so I think the ideas are coming about from everyone and executed by everyone. And so we're getting this very interesting, awesome, amazing family feel of the bridge crew. It was, and some people talked about with Jonathan Frakes directing it, there was a bit on, it's not called After Trek. Oh, it's called, interesting enough, The Ready Room. I think they stole that from Trek FM. But they were talking, Alex Kurtzman was talking about how wonderful it was to have Jonathan Frakes directing and what a presence he brings, and that he added just some of the humor that wasn't even in the screenwriter, whatever.
Yeah.
And like the one where Tilly runs out of the medical bay and she runs to the left, and then it's still pan there, and then she runs to the right. And that was all Jonathan Frakes. And I thought, oh my gosh, just that tiniest bit of humor that, got slipped in, and he's putting his own touches on it. It was just so great. So
a lot of that TNG cast, like they're so funny, and even if anybody gets the opportunity to see Frakes in action, like, he's a funny guy. So it makes sense he would inject some of that lightheartedness and whatnot.
Yeah, and there was a comment again on the Babel conference that was talking about that, with Jonathan Frakes, we've got your landing party and you have what's happening on the ship, and these are two different stories, and very much like Insurrection or First Contact. And again, directed by Jonathan Frakes, that you've got these different, plot A, plot B going on. That's the ship and then down on the planet, which is just so reminiscent of what we see in Star Trek many times.
Also, and, his ability, I think, to create different locations, because that church set and the lighting and, everything that he brought as a director to that was so beautiful with the candlelight. And I could go on for hours, even just on his directing ability, because that, in contrast to the Discovery. Something else I did just want to say quickly was, to your point on these characters coming together. I loved when Tilly was coming up with or trying to come up with a solution for the issue. And she was like, and this is it's going to be a misquote, but like, where's Burnham to yes and me, like, like there was something so beautiful about even just like a line like that, where it shows that, to your point, like they are working together. It's not one person And, like it just so happened this time, the ghost was the person to push her,
The ghost or her own mind.
Yeah, true.
Well, listeners, be sure to check out our Discovery coverage. Live from the Edge airs on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, so you can watch Bruce and Brandy and ask questions live, and it will be released as a podcast on Saturday mornings. Laz, have you checked out the live show yet?
I have listened to the live shows after they were live, so not in real time.
Not in real time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult for me to, catch them on a Friday night. But I have participated and they just really are so much fun. So much fun. Now, our commentary will be available as tracks from the Edge with the wonderful Mike and Max. I love it when they go on. I learn about aspect ratio and everything about behind the scenes. So thank you. And of course, you can catch full analysis on the Edge main show with Patrick Devlin and myself. To wrap up coverage, join us for notes from the Edge for links between Discovery and the broader franchise with our own Christopher Jones. You will find all of these in the main feed for the Edge and in Trek.fm master feed. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery, and the best place to do that is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook, where I will collect your feedback for postcards from the Edge. You can also find us on Twitter at TrekFM or send us email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select the Edge. So Laz, tell us any upcoming projects you're working on and where we can find you on the interwebs.
Sure. Upcoming project-wise, I'll be continuing episode posters for every episode of Star Trek Discovery Season 2 in order a week after the episode airs. So effectively the day before, or the day of, rather, that the episode airs on Thursdays. You can find that on Twitter at my handle at LazMarquez, so at Laz Marquez. And I'm also concurrently doing episode posters for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So in addition to that, there are some other client projects I'm doing that I can't mention yet because of NDAs and stuff like that. So stay tuned, but you could find more info on Twitter or at my website at www.lazmarquez.com.
Well, you can find me here on the network where I co-host The Edge main show with Patrick Devlin. I also co-host Earl Grey with Richard Marquez and Justin Ozer, which is about the next generation. You can also find me on Fandom Podcast Network co-hosting Discoville, where we discuss the Orville and Discovery with my good friends Haley Stoddart, Kyle Wagner, and Kevin Reitzel. Do you watch the Orville?
I've seen half of the first season, and I have not caught up yet.
Okay, all right.
But I hear good things.
Oh, so. Well, that's nice, because I hear both positive and negative. And I'm like, okay. I just like it.
Well, it's similar to Star Trek.
It is, yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is the Babel Conference right there on Facebook. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer, visit patreon.com/TrekFM for all the details. I would like to thank our current associate producers, Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoab Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner, Ryan Mallett, Chris Trabuzio, and Brian Maloche. Thank you for supporting Trek FM and especially The Edge. Laz, thank you so much for coming on Postcards, and it just was great talking Discovery with you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And it was super exciting, and I can't wait to hear more.
So join us next week for another episode of Postcards from the Edge. Hailing frequencies open.